Former Vice President Mike Pence announced Saturday that he is suspending his 2024 campaign for the White House. "It's become clear to me it's not my time," Pence said during a speech at the Republican Jewish Coalition Conference. "I've decided to suspend my campaign for president effective today. To the American people, I say, this is not my time, but it is still your time," he added. The former Indiana governor said that while he's leaving the campaign trail, he will never stop fighting to elect principled Republican leaders to every office in the land. "We always knew this would be an uphill battle, but I have no regrets," Pence added. "The only thing that would have been harder than coming up short would have been if we'd never tried at all." Pence exits the crowded GOP field led by his ex-running mate, former President Trump, after struggling to pull ahead of his fellow Republican candidates battling to get closer to the frontrunner. Pence launched his bid in early June, making a pitch for different leadership and touting his experience as a congressman and governor of Indiana, as well as his time in the White House. He stressed his pride in the Trump-Pence administration despite his criticism of his former boss. "My family and I have been blessed beyond measure with opportunities to serve this nation, and it would be easy to stay on the sidelines, but that's not how I was raised," Pence said in his kickoff video. Pence, who had been a Trump cheerleader throughout the administration, broke with the former president after their 2020 election loss, when Pence certified the results showing President Biden's win despite pressure from Trump, who has continued to tout claims of widespread voter fraud. The former vice president, Indiana governor, and congressman leaned into his firm belief in traditional conservative values, often breaking from candidates like Trump and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis in the process. Pence was outspoken in his support for stricter limits on abortion, an issue Trump has dodged. He backed U.S. aid for Ukraine in its war with Russia, and the former vice president was open about the need to reform programs like Social Security and Medicare. But his focus on policy failed to translate to stronger poll numbers or donor excitement as Trump has dominated the race. Pence stood out on the party's first presidential debate stage in Milwaukee back in August, but regularly polled in the single digits as the cycle warmed up. Filings show Pence raised $3.3 million during the third fundraising quarter, coupled with around $620,000 in debt. He ended September with just about $1.2 million in cash on hand. By comparison, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, long considered Trump's closest challenger, brought in $15 million across his campaign committee, leadership pack, and joint fundraising committee in the third quarter. Former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley brought in $11 million between three of her political committees during that same period. Pence's exit from the GOP primary winnows the field of White House hopefuls battling to get closer to Trump, leaving those who support his bid to look toward other candidates. So, this is both surprising and not surprising. One, it's not surprising because his campaign, like pretty much every other campaign in this race except for a few, has been a tale of stagnation. He gets in the race, he's polling in single digits. A month passes, we're in July, single digits. A month passes, we're in August, single digits. A month passes, we're in September, single digits. He actually had higher polling before he got in the race. There were some polls, if I remember, that had him in like third place. But, that's my point of how he was someone who got in relatively late compared to many of the other people. I mean, Trump got in back in November. It took him until June. And over the course of 4 months, he saw that not only was his polling not increasing, but that was reflected in the donors. I mean, it's crazy that we even have to talk about money this way, but 3.3 million being raised, and almost any other analytic would be good. But then when you compare it to the numbers that DeSantis and Haley acquired, and that's not even counting Trump, then it's really much of nothing. And the fact that he was in debt, and really, honestly, that's what it all comes down to. The polling numbers were less a problem and more so just him being in debt, because the one thing that bothers these politicians more than any issue when they're running for office is being out of money. When they start getting in debt and having problems being able to travel here and fly there, that's the beginning of the end. That's why someone like DeSantis, who really has been stagnant himself, or rather has been on the decline, will keep being in the race as long as he has the donors. So get ready for another 3 months of that man. We're going to see him for a while if the fundraising keeps going. But the part of this that was kind of surprising, I would say, is the timing of it, because we're not that far away from the third primary debates. In fact, actually, I had given him $1 so that he could make it to the third debate stage. So I guess that's a L on my part, I suppose. But I didn't know he was going to drop out before a few weeks before the debate. So just the timing of it surprises me because I thought he was going to at least stay around or stay in the race until Iowa since he was investing so much time over there. Um, but besides that, it's really just we're getting close to voting. We only have 2 full months left until the first states start casting votes, and his campaign, it failed not because of a lack of name recognition. It's like 97% of Republican primary voters knew who he was, which is an issue that I think someone like Haley and Ramaswamy and the rest of them have struggled with, Scott in particular. Um, it was it's hard to sell yourself as the true conservative in the race when you're running as the VP, as the former VP to the front runner who was the former president. You can't make a compelling argument of I'm better than someone who picked me as their running mate. Who I was effectively the understudy to. Sure, you can say, he's lost before, etc. But Pence didn't do that. He would talk about we governed as conservatives, but Trump doesn't make a promise of that to. But that's not enough. You have to state the case for why you're better than this person. I don't think he effectively made that point. I also said before, this is a cult party. Pence agrees with Trump on almost every position, if not more extreme than he is, and yet he was sitting there in single digits really just because of the falling out they had all the way at the end of his vice presidency over the certifying of the election results. That's why they were calling him traitor. That's why on social media, anytime Pence would post something, it would have like 100 likes, 300 comments, or basically ratio where it's just people coming over there to talk about how dumb he was for even thinking he had a chance. But I truly believe if Trump hadn't have lost in 2020 and they hadn't had their falling out, which I don't think would have happened if that had occurred. Pence would either right now have been the front runner or in second or third place. He would be one of the higher polling candidates in this race. But because Trump was still around and sucked all the air out of the room, it just was never going to work for him. Some highlights of this campaign, I would say, were the kickoff video, because he tries to do his Reagan impression. Let's not forget the ad of him pumping the gas without clicking on what amount of gas. So you just hear that beeping noise in the background. And I'd say the second debate, the first debate, yeah, because that one was where people were surprised that he was more aggressive with someone like Ramaswamy. It's actually kind of surprised me just how that was all in the span of just 2 months. This is a really brief campaign that it took too long to start and it got out really early because of some money. But again, this campaign will be remembered because, as I said before, a vice president running against the president they served under is almost completely unheard of in modern history. And it's fascinating to see someone have to make the case as the understudy of the person who's leading that they're better than them. And I do think that Pence's best bet, because there was an article that came out the start of this year that said Pence and Pompeo should stay out of the race. I read it, I did my little coverage of it, and I tended to agree with it. But I think if Pence had stayed out this time around and then waited until 2028, because I do think if Trump loses, he's going to have less support. People are not going to be willing to sit there for a fifth presidential campaign. But I think if he had stayed out, waited a few years to see if Trump fizzled out or not, then his chances would have been better. I'm not going to say he would have won because we don't know who's going to run in 2028. I'm just saying that I think running against Trump was always going to be almost a suicide mission in terms of your electoral prospects. So this was a campaign that was very short. It it was fun to make fun of it. But there, the one part of the campaign I maintain was still important was the speech he gave about populism, even though it defined populism entirely incorrectly. It tried to say basically that if you have a populist type of rhetoric, then you're going towards left wing or um, progressive ideology. The reason that speech was important was because it was someone who was from the pre-Trump era that was like really super conservative, who was effectively warning the party against embracing someone that is more unorthodox, even though it's all total bupkis anyway, because those of us who remember Trump's actual tenure in the White House know that he governed as a right-wing person. But it was really important for the sake of this kind of like warning shot of, hey, it's been fun to sit here for 8 years and pretend like this guy is just this total icon of the American right, but he's someone who's flip flopped before. So does his imitator. Uh, and again, it really reminded me of Romney's 2016 speech, where it's these people who were part of this party that has been having this really big identity crisis, warning them against their cult leader, and just not being able to accept, yeah, your career is over. You either are on the Trump train or you're out. So he's the first one to get out in terms of like people who were really affiliated with Trump. I suspect. God, it's so hard to imagine Haley sticking around to like New Hampshire, but I think she's going to either get out around December or January. She'll come in probably like third or fourth place in Iowa, and then you know lose New Hampshire too, and then she'll drop out at some point after that. But like I said, Pence's campaign was brief, but it was important because it was a guy who did the right thing, which was to not overturn the election results, making the mistake of believing he could go back to his party that was sick of him ever since he made the one right decision of his entire career, and then thinking he could like wrestle away their support from the person that they've built their entire brand around. And I said this before, the Republican Party is dead. If Pence was running for the Republican nomination in 2012 or 2008, maybe he could have won. But he ran during the time that the party has been effectively, without officially calling itself this, the Trump Party. So that was a fatal error, and it was fun to watch it just kind of fizzle out. I hope he got his wake up call rather. Um, but I do think that in 4 years, if Trump loses again, we'll see something different. So who knows what Pence will do in between. Hopefully not run for office again, because his positions are pretty insane. And that's the part that's saddest to me, that we became like, American politics is so much of like a carnival where it's just issues don't matter. People should have been having him polling at 1, 2, 3% over wanting a 6 week abortion ban, which is basically a complete abortion ban because most women don't know they're pregnant after the first 6 weeks. It's been proven according to polls. Just completely riding Netanyahu to levels of absurdity. Right? You can condemn Hamas, but not pretend Israel is this godly saint that we need to pretend doesn't do things to Palestinians. Those are the issues that should have had Pence polling at 1, 2, 3%, but instead it was all because he did one good thing in a 30-year career, and that's how backwards American politics is now.